and I have
Welcome to Media Path. I am Louise Palanker.
And I'm Fritz Coleman.
Today on the show, we are 3 guests strong. And within those 3 guests, one of our guests is 3 people, which brings us to a record total of 5 guests on one podcast. Here's a fun cross-promotional fact. Each of our guests are show hosts who have bravely had Fritz and me as guests on their shows. We'll begin with podcaster, author, radio host Robert Manni. Then the Cowsills will join us from Backstage at the Andy Williams Moon River Theater in Branson, and we'll round out the show with NPR's Steve Chiotakis, and he's going to share his latest projects and break down some election results for us. With a podcast full of guests, Fritz and I are going to be bullet pointing our media picks for you this week. So, Fritz, what have you got for us?
Well, I've said this a couple times before. For my money, one of the best shows ever produced for television is The Crown.
Yes.
And they just dropped season 5. One of the most interesting episodes is about 4 in, when they do the whole history of the Fayed family. Dodi Fayed was Diana's boyfriend at the time of her death. The story goes all the way back to when his father, Mohammed Fayed, was a little boy and always had a fixation with the royal family. So it's a really fascinating arc from this little boy's fixation with royalty to his son dating a princess, and all of it seems preordained, especially when he buys Harrods, the biggest department store in the world in London. And amazing, I also watched episode 6 last night, which is really wonderful. It's the whole Martin Bashir story, where this BBC journalist forged documents to get an interview with Princess Diana. Really interesting.
I just love it, and I can't help but sort of picture the royal family kicking back and going, hey, let's see what's going on.
They do watch it.
Do they?
They do watch it. I don't know what the reaction is, but they do watch it.
Okay. All right. I'd love to watch it with them and have them press pause and go, that's not what I said. So I am watching, speaking of British ladies, and we are thematically today, I am watching and recommending 19th century British lady detectives whose efforts to lend their unique skills to the betterment of all within a patriarchal society are stalwart and empowering. If you hunger for strong historical female heroes and richly detailed Victorian settings, you will love Miss Scarlet and the Duke on PBS, starring Kate Phillips and Stuart Martin, and Enola Holmes on Netflix, starring Millie Bobby Brown, Henry Cavill, and Sam Claflin. So how are men adapting to the collective amplification of female roles and voices? Our first guest, Robert Manni, has been studying exactly that. Robert is a guy's guy looking at life through a guy's lens because he's a guy with some stuff to say about guys to guys. Robert Manni is the host of Guys Guy Radio, a podcast and a weekly primetime radio show on KCAA in Southern California. Robert's show features a dynamic spectrum of guests from the worlds of celebrity, modern relationships, writing, career guidance, wellness, diet, sports, music, and spirituality. Robert has written Robert can say the name of his book, The Guy's Guy, Guide to Love. His YouTube channel is called Guy's Guy TV, and he's pulling his efforts together under, you guessed it, the Guy's Guy banner. Welcome, Robert, and tell us, if you will, about your brand and your perspective.
Well, thank you so much, Louise, and thank you, Fritz. And I really enjoyed having you on my show, so I'm so excited to be here. Well, my brand's really about trying to do the very best I can to help men kind of keep up, because this is a time where, in some ways, it's paradoxical because men have never been more free to be whoever they want to be, yet it's also a time where it's never been less clear who men really are. While women are on a steady path of achievement and long overdue recognition, guys have kind of fallen behind, and for younger guys, they don't have a lot of role models. They've got the MMA, manscaping superheroes. For the boomers, you know, we're kind of being put out to pasture in the eyes of some folks. And I think really men have to take it in a positive light, because this is a terrific time for men. I actually think it's the best time ever to be a man. And what we need to do, it's pretty simple. We need to pay attention and to listen to what women have to say, because women have been kind of kept down for not hundreds of years, but thousands of years. And this is a time where change is happening very rapidly. And unfortunately for guys, they're kind of caught in the crosshairs in terms of what's happening. And it's challenging to them because they're not sure sometimes what their roles are.
What do you think is men's greatest misunderstanding about women? And then the reverse of that.
Well, I can only speak for myself. I think what we need to do more of is pay attention. I think women are fantastic at paying attention to the details and really knowing how to read their guys and what's going on. And men pay attention, but usually it's more about themselves. So I don't know if men have taken enough time to really think about what it is that they don't really understand about women. And instead, a lot of guys just either throw their hands up in the air and just, or say, hey, it doesn't matter. I am who I am, and that's the way it is. And I think that's a big mistake.
Well, in your branding, you kind of talk about men falling behind, but then you go on to say this is not a competition. So do you mean that they're sort of falling behind in terms of evolving into all they could be, or all they hope to be, or all they've always secretly wanted to be? And,
yes.
And kind of like from little boy on, in all kinds of like subliminal ways, they're taught, what a man is. And some of their interests get squashed, or some of their instincts get squashed. And so maybe they're focusing on themselves because they're so preconditioned to make sure that they're being enough of a man, that becomes a preoccupation.
Yeah, that's a great point, Louise. It's tricky. I have a 9-year-old son, and I've been watching the situation. My wife and I have been watching very carefully how it's about it, because they seem to be really taking into consideration the individuals, and everybody's treated fairly. And it's not like, well, you're a boy and you do this, and you're a girl and you do that. It's humanity. And I think that's really terrific. And it takes a while for guys to get over that. It's not just you can't just flip the switch for men, particularly guys like, Fritz and myself, we're boomers. We're not going to change instantly, but if we're open-minded and we start to listen a little bit more as to some of the, I don't want to say grievances, but some of the issues women have, and deservedly so, we need to listen to them and hear what they have to say. And I think it's all been coming out, whether it's Me Too or just the breakthroughs in various industries, that women are really forging ahead. And a lot of guys get confused by it. And as you look at the numbers, men are not educating themselves the same way. The attendance in college, the graduations are down, men versus women, and it's a different trajectory. It's a different trend, and I think we have to keep close eyes on that, close tabs on it, because we really want everybody to kind of all boats to rise.
I know that we know that men and women are different, and now we know there's more to gender spectrums than we had ever realized. But I still think that there's a lot of pressure on boys to be a breadwinner, to be a person that's, if you're going to have a family, like it's going to be on you, whether or not everybody eats and everybody has a home. And that pressure, I think, builds as you move through your childhood. I've never been a man, but did you guys feel that as you were growing up?
For me, absolutely. That was just the expectation. So it wasn't like a pressure. It was just, that's how we were conditioned. I'm not sure what your thoughts on it.
It was modeling from our parents and modeling from other adult men in the family.
Yeah, it was the expectation. So we didn't really think about, oh my God, I have all this pressure on me. It was just, this is how guys live. And we didn't really think about, well, the women are going to have a different type of expectation or different path. We just figured this is what we do. This is what dad did. Some things will be different, but we're putting ourselves forward one step at a time to really be a breadwinner and take care of ourselves and take care of our families. And I don't think we did a lot of circumspection about that in terms of, well, are our roles changing, or, what's the roles of women? While we were growing up and getting into it, I think we just did our thing.
I think that women understand men better than men understand themselves. But what do you think a woman's greatest misunderstanding about men is?
I would, respectfully, I don't think women understand men better than men understand men, because ultimately a woman isn't a man. And you really have to be one to know one in the full spectrum. Mm-hmm. So I think guys, they're mistakenly considered more complicated than they are. I think a lot of times women, because they pay attention so well, they're thinking there's all kinds of things going on in the guy's mind, and there might not be. I find that with most of the guys I know, if they have an issue, they bring it up. If they don't, that means they're happy. Now that sounds pretty simple, but maybe that's the way it is. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. And a lot of times women, in an effort to make the relationship as good as it can be, they'll do a lot of thinking in terms of like, what about this? What about that? And getting really into the details. And you can see when men and women have conversations or arguments, even disagreements, where a woman many times wants to keep going and really drill down. And that's understandable. And the intention is good. And a lot of times guys are like, well, this is my opinion. I'm sorry if you don't agree with me. And I think that's kind of where the separation is in terms of how men and women think differently.
And I think along with that, women are more prepared to go deeper emotionally than men are, even in discussing it. Women are not afraid to sort of look inward and figure out where the feelings are coming from and express those. Men have to have this outer crust to protect themselves against the onslaught of other, alpha males. And it's just interesting. In my family, it's always been the women who have been able to bear down on whatever the emotional problems are.
I think there may be more vulnerability that a guy might feel to reveal something that might, like as Fritz was talking about, like within the pecking order of men being men together, that you're just not supposed to show that kind of weakness. That, they give each other the business in different ways than women do. Women can be mean, but men can be like a little rough, and you have to, be a man and take it. Or, you get mocked or teased or whatever. And I kind of wanted to press on that a little bit in terms of like toxic masculinity and ask you, because I've been kind of playing with this theory that I think it may be the root cause may be fathers bullying and belittling their sons. And that may be the core of it, because that, of course, is hereditary. So if a father is saying to his son, "You little fairy," or whatever, then he's going to try to be ultra strong, and he's going to do that to his kid. And I think that once they get to adulthood, they're not going to talk about that, because it would be embarrassing to admit that your father called you those types of names. So what are your thoughts on that?
Whoa, there's a lot there. There was toxic masculinity is certainly an issue, but we have to be careful not to paint a wide brush with it. And dads being tough with their sons, there's a fine line where they want to bring out the best in their sons, and they know that other dads are going to be tough with their sons also, and they have to be prepared for competition, whether it's in the classroom or on the sporting field. So you want to have a high bar there, but you don't want to be into a bullying situation or putting your son down, of course, because that's not going to really help anybody. And that's a human issue where nobody really benefits from being bullied. And you know what? Women bully guys, and guys bully other guys, and fathers bully sons. And it goes all around. And bullying is an issue in our society nowadays. Why it's bigger now than before, I don't know, but it seems to be something that every parent needs to be mindful about. And I think the best thing to do is really, if you're a parent, is really listen and get a sense as to, if you have a son like I do, how is he like me? How is he different? How can I help him be the person that he is? Because, I got married late in life, and I thought, when we had a child, he'll be like half like my wife and half like me. Of course, that was completely Neanderthal thinking, but I realized what a beautiful person my son is, and how much of a teacher he is to me. Yeah. I will be tough on him. We go out and we play ball together. I'm going to really drill into him the fundamentals and the importance of practice and the importance of repetition and the importance of getting things down to muscle memory, because other people aren't going to do that. And I'm not going to coddle him on that yet. I'm his biggest supporter. And I make sure that he number one, he sees sports and other activities as fun, because that's the way it should be.
You and Louise both brought up a good point about toxic masculinity. I wouldn't say this was toxic, but the masculinity that my father showed, classic World War II, post-World War II father, and he was not emotional at all. He kept all of his feelings inside. And I think that was a post-war syndrome of men who say, look, we survived the war. Hitler's not in charge. We made it through the Depression. I'm providing you a beautiful home, 3 squares a day. You have a safe place, a roof over your head. that my obligation is done. That was his obligation. His obligation wasn't to drill down and find out the many layers of my emotional issues. My mom did that a little bit, but it was the expectation of masculinity at certain times. I think it's a product of the time. He was also a softy at heart, but he had this external crust because he was a businessman and always had to put up a tough front. And I think thankfully, those expectations are settling down now. But I always felt bad for my dad that he couldn't explore his feminine side as much as I think he would have liked to, because it was expected for a man to put up a crusty front in those times.
I think in general terms, you're correct, Fritz, but every situation is different, and there are exceptions. With my dad, he was in World War II. He won a Bronze Star. He was a medic. He was doing some type of work that I didn't know about when he got home from there. And he was a tough businessman, yet he was always available. And that's the thing I really love and respect about him, is that he was always there for me. He didn't, if I needed to talk about something, about feelings or a situation, whether it's work or personal, he was always there. And I don't think I could ask for more than that, particularly because of all those things his generation went through that you mentioned, Fritz. So just being there and being available, I think, is pretty much something that a son could be very grateful for.
Your father was more evolved than mine, that's for sure.
Okay.
My father also suffered from alcoholism, and that helped to shut him down the rest of the way. But I'm just speaking in general terms about expectations of the male role model have changed over the last years, and I'm so happy. And I think that's the equality of responsibilities coming in marriages now. Women have reached a little bit of an equality, not as much as we would like, but they talk to one another eye to eye instead of the man being condescending. So maybe men are allowed to be more emotional now. I don't know.
That's a slippery slope also. And I agree with you completely. But you know what? Women want, a lot of times they say they want the men to show their feelings. Yet if you don't want the guy to be a blubberpuss and be crying all the time either. There has to be a fine line where, you're a man and you know how to express your feelings at the right time in the right way, but it has to be kind of measured in a way, because women don't want men to be men. I've interviewed a lot of dating experts, a lot of male and female dating experts. And to a person, all of the female dating experts say that women want to date. They want men to be men in the best sense of the word. That doesn't mean arrogant. It means confident. It means kind. It means respectful. It means fun. It means being a guy's guy, but it doesn't mean being a macho jerk.
So that, you're threading like a delicate needle, especially when it comes to matters of the heart and hoping to win over the heart of someone that you're interested in from the guy's perspective. It feels, that to me seems like a narrow lane. So what are some of the mistakes that men make when they're trying to go deep, like past the third date, when they're trying to have like a meaningful conversation, but not becoming too emotional for her to handle?
That's a great question. When I first met my wife, we went on 3 dates, and I had been in long-term relationships and I really enjoyed them, but they never ultimately worked out to marriage, if you will. And I was having such a great time with my wife to be. And at the time we were just dating, I said, what do I need to do to be a good boyfriend? And we were out to eat and she put her fork down and she looked at me and she said, pay attention. And I said, is there anything else? And she said, no. And it really made a light bulb go off above my head. And I realized that just be myself, but be more mindful of that I'm not the only person in the room. And I think a lot of guys fall into that trap, maybe because we've been allowed to be that way, or the expectations that we talked about, Fritz. But I think men need to be mindful as to the things that are going on with women, the same way that women are so fantastic at keeping up with the details as to they can read your mood. They know if there's something wrong, they're going to ask some questions. And a lot of times guys aren't going to do that. And I think we need to be better at being present, mindful, and paying attention. And if we did those 3 things and just continue to be ourselves, otherwise things will get good really fast.
Well, I'll give you an action item, Robert, and I am no relationship expert, but actually, a guy might listen to that and say, I'm not sure exactly what he means, because I need to order, some food and worry about it in my teeth. And like, you've given me too much to think about. So here's like a specific swing thought for the golfers out there. Ask a follow-up question. So in other words, you might say, tell me about your childhood. Don't let her just talk and then talk about your childhood. I mean, even though I'm sure she wants to hear about it, but let her know that you listened by saying, "Oh, so your dad was interested in his garden, and what kind of flowers did he grow?" So, yeah, I mean, that's I think the best way to show an interest is to ask a follow-up question. That lets them know that not only were you listening, but you're really interested.
I agree with you 1,000%. It's great advice. And I hope men are listening out there, because it'll really score a lot of points. And not that it's a game, but you know what? One of the things that's happening nowadays is dating should be a fun sport. And so many people treat it like a business transaction, and it's like an interview. And it really needs to be more, what happened to romance? I think if we got back to that a little bit, and, with the online dating and the check marks and the must-haves and all of that, let's just have some fun. I got to tell you, when I was dating online, I had such a blast. And I have friends who I met online, women who are long-term friends and business associates. And they're people. You can make friends. It's always good to meet new people. You don't want to tangle things up with the relationship stuff, but people are people. So if you look at things in an open mind, saying, "Am I meeting somebody new that's a pretty cool person that I want to hang out with?" That's a really great thing. Not every situation is going to turn into a romantic partnership, but people need to mix it up with people more and not be so judgmental.
So you wrote a novel, The Guy's Guide to Love. What came first, the novel or your podcast?
The novel. Everything started with the novel. I had written a prior book to learn how to write, really, and I learned all about the industry. I learned what I needed to do right. I realized I needed to write something in the third person, and I just had a thought about this book. The title came to me first, and I wrote about the world I knew, which is the world of advertising, and it's about two men in New York competing for love, sex, power, and money. And the one main character, he decides, he's asked by his ex-girlfriend to write a column for a woman's magazine publication about men. And he refuses to do it, and he refuses to do it, and he refuses to do it until his best friend starts messing around with one of his clients. And then he takes the gloves off and says, "You know what? I'm going to reveal what a lot of guys are really like and see what happens there." And from there, the roles get reversed. A lot of things happen. There's a lot of savvy women in the novel. There's a lot of, guys who need to really wake up. And there's a lot of sex, and there's a lot of fun. And Dan Wakefield, the iconic 20th century author of New York in the 50s and starting over, he called my book the male successor to Sex and the City. So I couldn't ask for a better blurb.
Wow.
Absolutely.
That is quite flattering.
So how's the definition of a guy's guy changed over the last 10 or 15 years?
Well, a guy's guy is really, he's not a macho man. He's really more contemporary man. He's emotionally available. He respects women. Guys like him, women like him. He can be your friend. If it's women, you can be your lover. And it's somebody that's positive and really the type of person you want to hang out with and you can trust and that you like. And that's really what I hope a lot of men will start to think about. How can I do things for other people? How can I be a guy that's not a predator? How can I really develop relationships with my female friends, with female partnerships, and also my buddies?
I have to say, your podcasts stretch way beyond relationships. There's some really wonderful ones, and I started to listen to them. You did one called Jewish Gangsters versus the Nazis with Michael Benson. That was fascinating. So it was New York Jews that were in their own sort of underworld, and that was fascinating. And there was another good one called Resurrection with Paul Selig. So you sort of stretch your titles into all sorts of interesting areas.
Well, I got to tell you, what happened, Fritz, was I wrote the novel, and then life imitated art in that I started blogging about men for women on my website. And then I started to do the podcast, and I got a lot of dating and relationship experts on the show. And then a few publicists discovered me, and they started sending me different types of people. And I thought, you know what? Let me let this thing grow organically. And if I can do anything to help raise the vibration, the frequency of the planet, to help men be as good as they can be, to help women men, I think that would be a positive. So I'm deluged with guest requests, and it's fantastic. And the show keeps growing. We've been downloaded in over 101 countries. The YouTube now is up and running. We're on Rumble, and I've got some other books in the works. So all systems go, and I'm having a blast. And you know what? We're doing anything we can to bring new information to people and help them.
Well, you're an interesting guy. Great podcast, my friend.
Thank you.
It's just, thank you so much for the work that you do. It's so valuable. Thank you. And
thank you for being on my show. You guys were awesome. I love the work you're doing. And I love the Cowsills.
All right. Well, you're on the same bill with them. So we'll say hi.
Excellent.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, guys.
All right, Robert. Take care.
See you, Robert.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
All right, for those of you who might be checking out Media Path for the first time, we'd like you to be hip to what we're doing. This is episode 118, I think. Is it 118?
No, this is 115, Fritz.
118 is where I want to be. That's my goal.
You're very aspirational.
We'd love you to check out our vast library of past episodes at MediaPathPodcast.com. You can hear us hanging out with a wide variety of guests. For instance, episode 3. A subject close to my heart, Motown, episode 7. We have Dateline host Keith Morrison talking about the red hot topic of true crime. In episode 90, we have guys that did the writing of the music in Dirty Dancing. So check us out, Media Path Podcast on YouTube as well for lots of additional visual content.
Legendary family band, the Cowsills, are joining us with new music. Their recently dropped critically acclaimed album is called Rhythm of the World. They have their own podcast. They travel every summer with the Happy Together tour. And the Cowsills star in the documentary we made together called Family Band, The Cowsills Story, which you can find and enjoy on Amazon Prime. Paul, Susan, and Bob Cowsill are coming to us from Backstage at the Andy Williams Moon River Theater in Branson. Woo-hoo. You're a part of their big Christmas show. Tell us about the show. What do people see when they come?
Well, first, I would like to make one correction. We refer to it as Louise Palanker's documentary.
Oh, thank you.
Family Band, The Story of the Cowsills.
Starring the Cowsills.
So just to set the record straight on that.
Lenny Riefenstahl presents the Cowsills.
What That's right. Stop. There's almost as many atrocities. Yes, Paul?
I will tell you that, when we were kids, I know, Louise, you know all about these things. And Fritz, you probably do too. When they had craft music halls and they would have, their Christmas craft music hall. And we would get to be on those shows. And man, they were so much fun and doing little skits and doing things other than what you would normally do. And this is so much like that. We're in a bunch of productions where they're not looking at us. They're looking at the dancers behind us.
The only difference is that learning all those dance moves while singing all those songs was a heck of a lot easier back in 1968.
Oh, yeah.
Well, sorry, Bob. I know you want to talk, but the other thing about it is that we got handed all these Christmas carols that, one would think that we would have known by now.
You would.
But little did I know that Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree had a pumpkin pie in it.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought that Andy was making up these lyrics, and come to find out, I had been making up my own lyrics all these years.
Yeah.
So I had to just learn what I thought it was and relearn. That's it for me.
Okay, you had the schoolyard version. Yeah.
Well, and also, Bob, sorry.
Now, I will tell you a big difference.
Okay.
Like even in an orchestra setting, the best orchestra in the world, all of the musicians have their music stand and their notes and their what I need to play to do this great part. In this production, you get no quote unquote music stand. There are no monitors.
No, there's no prompters.
Prompters, teleprompters. You've got to memorize everything. And I'm at 73. I have reached a certain tier in my artistic life. I am the oldest person in this musical production.
And I'm the second oldest.
You're at that point.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Honest to God, you guys, when we started with Happy Together back 8 years ago,
you're the babies.
And we still are. In fact, we need to always go to Happy Together where we are still the youngest people on the tour.
Yeah. They don't want to say impressionable things around you.
What's more fun? Is it more fun touring now that you're older and care less than it was when you were younger and being ordered around? Which is more fun?
Good question. Bob, Paul?
Well, I mean, we're having the time of our life. So if that's not having more fun than we had before, then I don't know what is having more fun. These are great, you see, because unlike the Happy Together tour where we're on a bus and we're thinking we're sleeping great, but we're not. We think we're eating great and we're not. And,
we know we're not
it's
eating.
very stressful on the Happy Together tour for some reason. It could be personnel or what have you. But here, it's Christmas. And it's Andy Williams. And so everybody respects what we're doing.
It's really a nice vibe.
And we're not moving, and we're going to these bitchin' apartments, right, Bob?
Right.
Yeah.
6 nights a week, the audience is coming to us, which is the opposite of the Happy Together.
Yeah.
And this is why we understand the acts that want to go to Las Vegas and get a residency. And I'm tired of going to the audience, let the audience come to us. And we're experiencing that. Because, the stress of the Happy Together tour is the show's over. Hurry up. We got to pull out real quick. It's like always that.
Crazy.
We're here. Hurry up. We got to go back
to our cozy little houses.
We have these large apartments.
Large.
It's actually timeshare. It's a timeshare building, kind of thing. So we're in these big apartments with a kitchen, a normal size fridge, and normal everything.
Decorated for Christmas. Some of us.
And so we really are getting quality sleep here.
Right.
Quality sleep.
And you come from singing with 2 people to, honestly, I'm singing Jingle Bells with probably 15 or 16 people. I mean, this is fantastic support, I must say.
Is it all Christmas music, or do you get to do some stuff from Rhythm of the World or any of your earlier hits?
Oh, no Rhythm of the World, but we are definitely doing what are we doing?
We're doing Rain, Indian, and Hair.
Yeah,
okay,
and then we
cool.
do a Christmas song.
Yeah, we do a little 4-song segment in the first half, and the Lettermen are also on the show. Now we're reconstituting this show. It's first time back in 3 years. This has been gone like everything.
Yeah.
So Branson's about 50% back at best. And so, but every night we got a wonderful audience there. Now, look, this was a 2,200 seater Andy built that he filled every night during his heyday.
So, Bob, what you need to know is this. When I lost touch with you guys when I was a kid, my next obsession was the Letterman. And I loved that obsession. Right, Susan, because it got me familiar with the whole American songbook. The Letterman have recorded every great song ever.
I can go with that.
And the harmonies, and I was obsessed. And so I'd go to the department store and look through the record bins and find Letterman albums from, 1963. And I was that was my big thing. So
that's cool.
So give them big hugs.
I will, but these Lettermans weren't born in 63.
It's new Letterman, right?
Louise,
yeah.
Let me tell you something.
Yeah.
And I know you love their songs and everything. And this is, if you want to come to Branson, you can hear the Lettermans and the Cowsills vocal stacks connect like magic.
Wow.
And combine and sing together. And it's really been a hoot and a holler.
I don't know if my head and my heart could even take it. That's so much
It's
love
crazy.
and harmony. I would just...
And you're there until December 9th. And then the next day, you're in Wisconsin. You guys are touring like 18-year-olds.
We are. Boy, the thought of flying day of show in the north is pretty scary, I'll tell you.
Which we are doing when we don't normally do. But,
boy.
Duty calls.
But we're that busy.
Thanks a lot, Fritz. We're really
I wanted to
relaxing,
remind
but
you
now
that this is all going to come to a crash end here soon.
I can relax you right now very easily because we're going to play a game, and I know you love games. This game is called Teen Mag Trivia. And are you ready to play?
16 Magazine.
Okay.
I wish our lighting was a little better in here. But
Susan,
go ahead.
Actually,
lighting
you
is
look very
great.
good.
I'm completely washed
All
up.
right. In a 16 magazine article entitled Susie Squeals on the Cowsills, what secrets did she reveal about Bob?
Gotta be out of your mind.
Okay, first of all, by asking this as a trivia question, you are assuming that any one of my brothers would read an article about me in 16 magazine. That would never happen.
Susan, they came to you and said, give us secrets about
It never
I thought
happened,
no.
though, to your point.
No. Well, here's the thing. No. To be fair. Well, no.
Yeah.
To be fair.
Right on.
My experience with 16 magazine, there are times when they would come over to your house and interview you.
Yeah.
There were times when you had to fill out these little questionnaires.
Yes.
There were times when they were there wrangling these ridiculous articles.
In fact, I contend.
Yeah.
I will know if this is truly something she answered when I indeed hear the answer.
Okay. So here's the answer. Suze, this is the secret. This is the secret.
Only because I've read it, Louise.
Oh, so she had nothing on you, Bob. So the secret is he's peaceful and he helps me with my math homework. Devastating.
All right.
And my cursive writing, which he doesn't remember.
All right. In the
But
16th.
that is true.
Do you want to elaborate?
Yes. No. Just that. Just more to the point of our relationship that he remembers zero of up until recently.
That Bob at age 18 knew third grade math. So, props.
Yes, he did.
Yes.
And he was the only one in the house who did, frankly.
So, in 16 magazine article entitled "Bob Answers 80 Intimate Questions," Bob, how did you answer the question? What type of
80
girl?
questions?
Yeah, there was a lot of homework. So, what type of girl do you usually dislike?
Dislike.
Yeah.
Oh, am I to answer this?
Well, the correct answer would be.
Yeah, me and Paul, we want to
let me do the typical thing. I don't like phonies.
Phonies.
Loud.
Right.
Loud.
Aggressive.
Pretentious. Forward.
Yeah.
How am I doing?
You're doing good. It said girls who are trying to make a good impression on everyone when they are actually blowing their cool.
That's a very hip answer.
That's the 18-year-old way to say it.
That actually sounds like Bob. There were the occasional times where they did get us to actually say things. It was rare.
Okay. Well, let's see what they had on Paul. Okay. In the 16 magazine article entitled "Our Hates and Loves" by the Cowsills, did Paul say, "I hate when girls wear too much makeup and are always talking. I hate pea soup," or "I hate working with people who have hang-ups"?
I hate pea soup.
Okay, it's a trick question, all of the above.
Yeah, I was going to say.
It sounded like all of them.
The first one sounded familiar to my brain because I must have read that somewhere.
Never said it.
Answering.
I'm sorry. You said all of the above after you let him answer the question.
Yeah, because I know that you guys have to go on stage, and that Fritz has stuff he wants to say to you. So I didn't want to take up too much time with my little game.
I want to talk about this beautiful new album, Rhythm of the World. What year was the last album you recorded? It's been a while.
Well, we put out Global, which was number 2 of the 3 we've done now, counting Rhythm of the World, in I think 1998.
No, you have to count the Billy Benefit.
Billy Benefit concert is number 3 of 4 we've put out.
Okay.
You're right, Louise.
She's okay.
She is.
And actually, the Billy Benefit concert album is probably one of the most expensive historical albums of the 4. But anyway,
just microphone rental alone.
We ended up on this Happy Together tour and on a bus together, the 3 of us, for 3 months, and we started getting inspiration to write songs. Really, initially from Howard Kalin of the Turtles, who kept going, "You got to get up," to the audience every night. And at one point, you hear that 20 times, and you finally say,
"You write a song."
I think there's a song there. And then you
hear anything 20 times.
There must be 15 songs about getting up. And you said, "Well, all right, well, we'll do number 16."
Yeah, Jackson wrote a couple.
Yeah, there you go.
We had a lady talk to us last night when we were headed up to where we do a meet and greet, and she was coming by. And what we were just talking about?
The writing the songs.
Oh, yeah. And she was telling us, gosh, it's really hard for us to get up. That lady.
Yes, she was in their seats to.
And we didn't even tell them to get up. She was just
their happiness.
We do not tell our audience to get up. To our audience, that could be viewed as exercise. But nonetheless, we started that song, which led to other songs, and we just had a frenzy of a writing spree that was unusual. And then we said, well, look, these are pretty good songs. And then that's when you really get inspired to record them.
Well, let me ask you this. How does pledge music work? That was the first time I'd ever heard that term. Is this like a crowdfunding for music?
Yes.
It was.
Yeah, till it went belly up right in the middle of our campaign.
Oh, Lord.
It's like a Kickstarter program. So you win a goal. As we reached our goal, I thought we could do this in $70,000. As soon as we reached that, the whole thing went south. It went bankrupt. They took the money of the pledgers. We never got any money.
And Rock's money.
But it's at this point that we're meeting our executive producer, Rock Positano, who's going to rescue the project right there. And then he steps in and rescues the whole thing. We get into the studio at Dockside. We make the recording we all wanted to make. It's mixed by Frank Filippetti, one of the best, mastered by Greg Calvi, one of the best, because rock's kind of intertwined with a lot of people in our business. And in the role of executive producer, knew who to bring us to and how to, his part of the equation. You need his part of the equation filled in to equal success.
Oh, yeah.
And we're very fortunate about that service.
Wow.
You need the right
And Rock lost a ton of money with the pledge thing because he went with us. We said, look, we've got about 300 people here pledging. We want to, at least respect their pledge and take care of that. And he went, oh, well, we can either do that or we can just drop it. And we said, no, we're going to keep that. And so he lost his money and we were worried about that. We said, Rock, man, your money. He goes, hey, if I want that money, I'll go get it. So
wow. Where did you do this album?
Dockside Recording Studios in beautiful Maurice, Louisiana, the home of Steve and Wishnales.
And you live there, and you live there while you're recording, correct?
Yeah.
You live there, 12 acres of isolated, no one can get to you. It was just us. The 7 of us walked in with our engineer, Justin Tockett, and came up with what you hear. And it was quite the experience.
And what do you eat?
Oh, well, it's really cool because you can eat regular food. So breakfast, dinners, lunches, all can be prepared. Like whoever's not in the booth working, they're down making food.
So Wish and Steve have a house, and then they have this other house where you sleep and full-on kitchen. It's a full-on huge
amazing
house. And then you walk from the house, and we did it at like 10 in the morning, and we'd walk over to the studio, which is just
PJs.
a little bit of a walk, and we'd stay there till about 6 or 7 at night and get the heck out of there.
Oh, that
Yeah,
sounds
did that every day.
Yeah. That
Try
sounds
and
beautiful.
stay healthy.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was so much fun.
So I want to hear about some conversations because when you talk about your podcast, you talk about finally getting a chance to sit down and talk to the people with whom you were crisscrossing the country when you guys all had hit records and were touring in the late 60s. And now you get to have these heart-to-heart conversations with people like, for example, when I found out that your brother John and Jay Osmond, who are both drummers, have the same birthday and have been talking to each other on their birthdays every year. What other fun things have you found out while you talk to people?
Wow. I know one. Oh, go ahead.
I only have one, and so I can get rid of this one really quick. What we have found out is how much they all liked our band.
Oh.
And respected what we were doing. We never knew that until,
Yeah, for sure. We didn't know that because we didn't hang out with any of those folks.
Right.
One thing I learned was that Felix Cavalieri played the bass with his feet.
What?
Wow.
That was, like on all the Rascals things, it's a keyboard bass he's playing, which was at that time very rare. Now it's done all the time. But how about that?
We had him on this podcast, and a lovely man. Just a great guy. Really nice man.
Yeah, for sure.
Here's a nugget.
Here's a nugget.
Yeah.
Here's a Springsteen nugget.
Okay.
So we had Stevie Van Zandt on. And because we're in the same business, we like to know about people's lives on the road. And we thought, well, this is a triple A team we got going here with the East Street Band. So we said to Stevie, well, what do you guys do for sound check? Because we know what we do. And I said, are you guys back at the hotel? Do you have stand-ins? That kind of thing. And Stevie just hung his head. He goes, oh, sound checks. So they can be, now Bruce Springsteen is known for like 4-hour marathon shows.
Yeah.
And the sound check can be as long.
Yes.
Because Bruce micromanages. And Bruce, during all of their concerts, had to go into each section of the auditorium
Or the arena.
stadium or the arena and make sure the mix was okay at that section like it was at all the other sections. And now Steve Van Zandt's going to quit
Because of it.
this band, okay? So he's telling us good stuff because, he quit. He thought it was the worst career decision in his life, but he doesn't know The Sopranos is coming and other things are going to happen. But at the time, he just couldn't. Can you imagine a 4-hour sound check followed by a 4-hour show?
That's 8 hours.
I do remember that documentary. I don't know if they were making Darkness on the Edge of Town or one of their albums, but he just was trying to get the right drum sound out of Max. And Max would hit and Bruce would yell, stick. He didn't want to hear the stick. He wanted to hear the drum. So that sounds like your brother Billy to me a lot.
Yeah, a little intense there, huh?
Yeah.
All right.
What
else you got, kids?
Any questions for us?
Talk about Nuclear Winter.
Oh, Nuclear Winter, yeah.
Unfortunately,
I brought up a lot of bad
with
subjects, and I apologize. I didn't
I
realize.
love you. I love where you're going, Fritz.
Okay.
the problem with Nuclear Winter is that it's relevant today more than it was even when it was written, which was in the 80s by a friend of mine, Peter Bunch, and myself. We had a band called Channel 9. But anyway, Nuclear Winter was a fear back then, but a long fear, like, oh, can you just imagine? Can you just imagine? Now we have it on Rhythm of the World. Just as soon as it comes out,
Yeah, it was a little weird.
all hell's breaking loose
Yeah.
over
Pretty good.
Putin.
Yeah.
And we're going, oh my God. So it's like on Rhythm of the World, yeah, Nuclear Winter, you can blow it up. Rhythm of the World, have your fun, but be careful, for crying out loud. Lend a hand. This is our main suggestion on the record, that we should lend a hand. Not Nuclear Winter, but go the direction of lend a hand.
There's a lot of beautiful sounds on the album, and everything feels relevant. And maybe the lesson is everything's always relevant. Everything about humanity is always relevant, and things go in cycles, and they come back, and
It's really true. And yes, Louise, cycles, because if we think about it, the last time the Cowsills had a for true release that was getting out to a larger public, the same darn stuff was going on. We had social unrest, we had political unrest, we had racial issues, and it's like the Cowsills popped in.
War.
We popped in with our let's all just try and maybe be happy.
Yeah.
Well, it's just ironic to me that the climate is incredibly similar.
Have the streaming services been beneficial to you, Spotify and all those things?
This is kind of what I was going to say, Fritz, in that, we sit here with an album out, but the landscape is so different looking. And, you can have a cover in like a Shindig magazine, but, that's going to get to 10,000 people or the old days of getting it to the radio station. Now it's like blasting all over the country. That's just not happening anymore. So,
or one Ed Sullivan.
Yeah, one Johnny Carson or one Jimmy Kimmel or Fallon.
That was it. You were it.
But nowadays,
yeah.
And so we're in our first tier that we call it of the album, which is basically PR, low-hanging fruit, stuff we can get without spending money on, but it has to go up to another level soon, and we're going to be going to that level.
Awesome.
Wow.
Well, I'm excited to hear.
To be that at that level.
Any way we can help, we would be happy to.
Thank you, Fritz.
Please listen to Rhythm of the World by the Cowsills. It is extraordinary.
How many shows are you doing a day? One show a day? 6 days a week?
One.
That's all you need. Please. Okay. I was just curious.
That's a lot. That's a lot. No ideas.
Well, you guys are so
6
talented.
nights a week. And by the way, there's many people in our show who actually do a second show during the day.
Oh my God!
But they're a whole lot younger.
I mean, a dancer that might be dancing in our show tonight is going to go run the spotlight at the Americana Theater for the Elvis show.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, isn't the Andy Williams Theater? That's the largest theater in Branson, isn't it? I
believe so.
Yeah.
I believe it's one
and
of
they're
them.
Tony Orlando's got a 2,000 seater as well, though.
Okay.
And I went when I was with the Cowsills in Branson when we were making the movie. I took a pilgrimage to the Andy Williams Theater. There's actually a river. There's a moon river that runs through it.
Oh God, Louise, it is so sweet around here. Every night they have Andy piped all through the parking lot. He comes and he's in a singing rock. There's a rock that I sit next to, and Andy comes out of it.
Oh my goodness, Suzanne!
It's amazing.
Andy's like a hug to me. I just love him.
Oh, big time for us too.
Yeah. Wait. Oh yeah, we have Cowsill mugs that were from when you guys sang at Fenway on our table. I don't know if you can see them.
What? Hey, you know what? I think mine broke.
Oh, I can send you another one. I've got like 3. I wish I was down there to see you guys. Have fun dancing. The Cowsills always love dancing.
You guys are awesome.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Have a great time. How long until the show starts? How far away from show?
7:30.
7:30.
All right. Enjoy. I love you guys.
Be well. Great talking to you guys. You're always so entertaining. See you later.
I love you.
Love you guys.
Thanks for having us, kids.
You're welcome.
And of
Good to
course,
see you.
Weezy, always.
Thanks for getting the word out, you guys.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You're welcome.
Dreaming
You
of a
deserve it.
white Christmas, just like the ones I used to know. Bells ring, fire is in the lake, snow is glistening. A beautiful sight, we're happy tonight, walking in a winter wonderland.
Yeah.
Ho, 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 ho.
I love it.
Have fun, you guys.
Wonderful.
Be safe.
Merry Christmas.
Okay.
Merry Christmas.
Okay, Bob.
Ho, ho, ho.
Steve Chiatakis hosts KCRW's Greater L.A., a daily show that brings you a little closer to the places and people of this giant, often unwieldy region that millions call home. Steve, tell us about your latest project, Born and Raised.
Millions live here? Oh my God, I had no idea. No.
Yeah, you can start counting. You'll see.
Wow.
Yeah.
Born and raised. Born and raised is sort of a labor of love, right? Because in LA, and Fritz, you know this, both of you know this, that this is a city. It's a city of transients. It's a city of people who come from different parts of the universe. And so what we see are people who grew up here, who have been here all of their lives, who've been here multi-generationally, whose neighborhoods, cities, towns have just changed, wholeheartedly from one generation to the next. And so you've got like a place like Boyle Heights, which has changed immensely since the days of the 30s and the 40s. Boyle Heights was actually a big Jewish community in LA for many, many years. Yeah. And then a large Latino contingency moved in there, and now you see a lot of gentrification happening in Boyle Heights. And it's all a product or a byproduct of how expensive it is to live in LA. And so people are always looking for a better, less expensive place to live. They're looking for a cooler place to live. They're looking for some culture, things like that, which is what new Angelenos want. But the people who have been here for a long, long time are the ones who suffer. They're the ones who get kicked out or priced out of the market.
And if an area gets more expensive, they call it gentrification.
They call it gentrification. I mean, obviously it is gentrification. Mm-hmm. I mean, and I don't want to demonize it like it's the worst thing, because gentrification happens all over the country. Mm-hmm. It happens in New York and Chicago and smaller cities too, where it becomes more expensive to live, and people are looking for different neighborhoods to go to. So do you call them interlopers? What do you call people who are just trying to find a different place to live?
Fancy.
That's right. Mm-hmm. I mean, I moved to LA 14 years ago, and it was a wonderful experience for me. And I met many people, and I don't think I moved to West LA and Santa Monica, so I don't think anyone accused me of gentrifying. But it's one of those things where it's like you see people who are priced out of their homes or priced out of their apartments, and where else can they go? They can't afford to live in a $4,000 a month apartment, high-rise building somewhere in LA. It's the
perennial problem in Southern California. It's never gone away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I used to listen to you between 5 and 6 o'clock in the morning on NPR Marketplace Morning Report, and I loved it because it was the first indication of how the stock market was going to do on that.
Wait, Fritz, were you still up from the night before?
Well, it depends.
Explain yourself.
That's bathroom break number 3 at 5 o'clock in the
morning.
Let's do the numbers.
Yeah.
I remember it well. And I moved to LA in the middle of the Great Recession, when Bear Stearns was going belly up, and Lehman Brothers and all these others, and they were like, "Can you get here as fast as you can?" Because
where did you do that show from? The Culver City studios, or where did you do that from? Did you do it here?
NPR, the NPR West Bureau is in Culver City. Mm-hmm. This Marketplace Productions is a different facility. It's not NPR. Mm-hmm. It's American Public Media, which is owned by Minnesota Public Radio, and their studios are in downtown LA at 3rd and Fig.
Oh, okay.
Right across from the Westin Bonaventure.
I think a lot of people might want to know a little bit more about how all the NPRs are connected and how they're separate.
I mean, just like there are commercial radio broadcast networks, TV and radio networks, there are public TV and radio networks as well. So they all fill a different role. There aren't, NPR is the main. I don't want to call it the main, but it's the big one, right? It's the one with hundreds and hundreds of stations across the country. But there are other entities that certainly offer public radio programming, such as American Public Media, which is what I told you, and there are different production houses that do different shows. Marketplace does one thing. There are different distributors, just like there are podcast distributors and TV show distributors. There are public radio distributors as well. And
PRX.
PRX, of course, one of the big ones.
So how do you guys decide how much local content you want versus how much of the great shows that people are very familiar with that are nationally famous? Like how do you determine your lineup?
What we air on KCRW?
Yeah.
I think, we know the people who listen to the radio station. I mean, just the fact that we have so many members, we have probably 50,000 members at the radio station. So we know what people want, what their tastes are. We also have the luxury as being one of the first, true public radio stations in the country. We were one of the first on board with this new network called NPR back in the early 70s. We were one of the first to put on Morning Edition and All Things Considered. LA is at that time it was the third largest market, but now it's the second largest market in the country. So a very important one for the national network as well. And so, we can understand sort of what our taste is. And and over the years, we've tweaked it a little bit, but we are one of the few unique dual format public radio stations where we have news and information, which is Morning Edition, All Things Considered, my show, Madeline Brand, other shows as well, the culture shows that we run on the weekends, but also we have music programming that we air from 9 to noon, that we air at night after 8 o'clock, and overnight we have an eclectic 24 stream that we have online that's 24 hours a day. We have a news stream that's 24 hours a day online. So we ask our members, we communicate with them as much as we can to find out what it is that they like. And they like the music. They like the news and that mixture. They don't want, 24 hours. We're just going to give you the information you need, because I think people are hammered over the head over, what's going on.
Two questions. Is it the same audience for your news content as it is for the music? And second of all, who is a typical KCRW listener?
Very cool people, Fritz, listen to KCRW.
No, I believe that. People who are smart.
Well, how long have you lived in L.A.?
40 years.
Weren't you brought here with the mission?
Yes, I was. Yep.
Yeah.
Who is the KCRW? That we are. Look, there are two main public radio stations in town, main ones that are NPR affiliates. There's KPCC on the east side in Pasadena, and then there's KCRW. KCRW is I always call it the original. It's been here for a long time. KPCC was much smaller until Minnesota Public Radio bought it and put a lot of money into it to make it a contender and a major player, and they do very well as a news and information source. So when we look at the people who listen to our radio station, we look at, again, it has its roots in music. It has its roots as a pure college radio station. The call letters mean College Radio Works, KCRW, licensed to Santa Monica College. So we tried to be very not to overuse the word eclectic about what we do, to try and use music and let students understand what it is that we're doing with the music and things like that. And I think when you look at the audience and who we're targeting, and I'll get to the first question, which was, do the people who like the music also like the news? And the short answer is yes. We do see a lot of crisscross with that. We do see a lot of, for a long time it was we would do news in the morning and then our numbers would drop a little bit during the music. But I think we're seeing all day parts that have been doing pretty well. And a lot of those listeners are the same. So it's, we have a unique product. We have I always say it's an indelibly connected LA product. We are, you're not going to find a station like ours in very many places across
especially your presentation, because you really drilled down on the culture of Southern California. You're one of the smartest people on the radio. I love listening to you.
Oh my God.
You are. And God bless public radio, because in this chasm between culture classes now, and mostly AM radio, but even FM radio, talk radio is so polarizing, and it's all heat and no light, and it's awful. And so I'm just so thankful that there's public radio to listen there, because you assume your audience is smart enough to be able to parse this information and make up their own mind about it. And it's
called nuance. Yeah, which is missing in radio. You remember when AM radio, I'm old enough to remember, listening to 89 WLS in Chicago. I grew up in Garrett, Indiana, and I listened to John Records Landecker.
I listened to him when he was in Philadelphia, WIBG. John Records Landecker and Larry Lujak and all those great guys from Chicago. That was an amazing media market, both radio and television.
Oh, Chicago? Are you kidding me? Yeah. Absolutely. And Chicago and LA media markets are both. I think LA is a wonderful media market as well. But when you think about, seriously, going back to the days of like the 50s, 60s, 70s, when it was AM radio and it was music and it was pop music, CHR, it was, it was your state, WABC in New York or WNBC in New York.
KHJ out here in Los Angeles.
KHJ, that's right. KFWB, which was, a large news presence. I mean, you have so many radio stations that were rooted in music. Or middle of the road, as they used to call it, where they'd have music and then they'd have a newscast, or they'd put, both news and information on. And it changed as FM radio really took hold in the 70s and early 80s. A lot of people made the switch and music sounded better on FM. And all of a sudden you saw all these AM stations that were powerhouses. Yeah. In the 50s, 60s, and 70s, go dark, lose a lot of money, and they had to figure out what to do. And the one thing that you can put on AM radio that sounds okay is a voice.
There's right-wing crazy people.
And a lot of right-wing crazy. I mean, seriously, there is no doubt. I worked for one of them. I worked for several news talk stations, commercial stations in Birmingham, Alabama. Very right-wing.
You went to the University of Alabama, Birmingham, and when I read that, I won't say I was horrified, but let's just say I was surprised, because you don't seem like somebody who might have come from there, and that's a very judgmental and probably a very shallow thing to say. It just surprised me.
Look, just like any other place, there are stereotypes. There are stereotypes about California that I can't stand either. People are like, you just drink oat milk all day long. And it's not what we do in California. Alabama is a beautiful state. My sister and my mom still live there. I go see them. I can fathom it like once or twice a year. That's about it. But it is a beautiful state, full of beautiful people. And the thing I think, and we have to realize, because I wanted to talk a little bit about the election too. And
we were going to talk about that.
Yeah.
I don't know how much time we have, but we have to get to know one another again, because we have really lost our minds. And I don't want to point blame toward anybody, like, whose fault it is that this happened, but we are so polarized as a nation. And I was talking to, I do some hits in Australia, the ABC down there. I've been to Australia and I've got friends in the media markets there in Sydney and Melbourne. And they'll call me sometimes for like an American perspective. And I'll go on the radio with them on their afternoon drive programs in Sydney and Melbourne. And, I talked to them right before the election and they were like, do you think, Steve, there will be a civil war in the United States? And, and I'm like, oh God, I hope not. That's terrible to think about. And I said, there's no geographical line, like a Mason-Dixon line that separates the North. We don't have that anymore. What we do have are differences of opinion and differences of values and differences in what we think the federal government should do. And I think a civil war will look like nothing else we've ever experienced. And God forbid anything like that happens. But and I made the description and I said, we have this, we don't even have a Venn diagram anymore, right? We have just two circles. They're just on opposite sides of the country.
With deep space in between. That's right.
Yeah, nothing. There's no commonality. And we've got to find a way to talk to one another again and stop talking over each other.
Well, I feel like we're sort of digesting, or we're sort of kind of like taking in whatever it is that we want in that moment, because it's doable. You can curate exactly what enters your brain. And so that becomes like crack or whatever will make you feel good in that moment. And so we've come away from that time period where you had to sort of listen to or watch whatever was on. And so you were going to, in order to get to Gilligan's Island, you were going to ingest some knowledge or do some thinking. And now you can mainline, whatever it is your particular inclination or ideology is. But like, how has NPR changed or adapted when we're all going to this sort of curated or streaming media that you can pause and come back to, and it's still exactly what you want to listen to and not anything that's in the general consciousness? Like, how are you guys adapting to that?
Well, I mean, we're doing what the others have done. I mean, how long were you with Westwood One? You know, you had to.
I was with Premiere.
Oh, you were Premiere. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I thought you were at Westwood One.
No, but like we're talking about, we have to accept everybody. So Westwood One, valid, valuable programming for sure. Not our enemy.
To find, I had Radio Network in my head.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. So anyway, to find a good, like what NPR went all in on podcasts, and they have, I think, very early, absolutely, to understand, to knowing that on demand is the way that we're all going to go. We don't have, I mean, we kind of have it in our cars now. We listen to podcasts for sure, but there's going to be a time when we get in our car and it's just going to be the internet on that screen.
Yep.
And you're not going to tune AM, FM like we used to. You're not going to put a CD. We don't have those anymore, or cassette, or whatever it is that we used to have in cars. You're just going to go in and you're going to go online, and it's going to be easy to do it. And it's already here. So as far as finding the best way to go forward, and what NPR did was they really invested heavily in podcasts and on-demand radio programming. They have just a huge breadth of different programs, from news programs to the politics podcasts and things like that I think do very, very well. Some of them are like some of the most successful podcasts in the country. And I'm proud of them for that.
But I don't know if there's anyone on the right that's listening to NPR programming.
And alas, there's our problem.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, but and what do they think? They're told. I mean, what does the right do when they take power? Like, I'm expecting as soon as the Republicans, and it looks like the Republicans obviously are going to take the House barely. Do they go after the Corporation for Public Broadcasting again? It's
well, I wanted to talk to you about that. Back during Reagan and Bush 1, there was a period of time when they wanted to defund public broadcasting and just make it part of the a private business model. And they also took away the fairness doctrine and ruined broadcasting in a whole bunch of different ways.
Well, that's a big one, Fritz.
Yeah,
the fairness doctrine was a big one.
Yeah,
86.
Yeah, it was huge.
But how would the fairness doctrine survive podcasting? That's the question. So,
well, because the FCC doesn't regulate podcasting.
Yeah, FCC is a broadcast. That's over the air stuff, and we don't have the internet as sort of a common carrier, right? And until we deem it as a common carrier, then this is what we're going to get, that it's a private entity and you can do whatever you want with the internet. The spectrum is ours. That's the air. And that's why the FCC regulates it, but it doesn't regulate it as much as it used to, for sure.
All right, let's get to the election. If you go onto the KCRW website, they have a great clip. They have several great clips, but one of Steve talking about why L.A. takes so long to count ballots in the midterm elections. And that's become everybody's question. Would Arizona please wrap this up? We have to get on with our lives. And we're still counting, so to speak. So why does it take so long in California?
Well, it takes long because you got 10 million people in L.A. County. And let's say 10 million people in L.A. County, and let's say 20% of those people vote. So you're counting 2 million votes, and you're doing it through different systems. L.A. moved to a new voting center apparatus where it's no longer polling places. There are voting centers all across the county. So they've got electronic ballots, and then of course they counter it with paper ballots too. I'm 99.5% sure that they have paper ballots that are backing up those electronic votes as well. And you've got to also, in the mail-in ballots, you have to check signatures. So you compare the signatures to the one on file with the one that you signed on the back of that envelope. And so it takes a minute. And California takes a minute. There are 40 million people in California,
So what is going on locally that I feel like if you're from L.A., this is where entertainment comes from. And when you hear the word Los Angeles, it doesn't even perk up your ears the way it would if you heard the name of your hometown and you lived in Boston or Boulder or Baton Rouge or Buffalo or Bend or whatever. So when you hear L.A., we still don't know who our mayor is. What should we L.A. citizens be paying attention to that we tend to ignore in favor of MSNBC or national politics? What are we missing here?
We have a new sheriff.
Do we? Okay.
We do.
Yeah.
We do.
Who's that?
Robert Luna, the former, the retired police chief of Long Beach, defeated Alex Villanueva. It's very uncommon for an incumbent sheriff to lose. Ironically, Alex Villanueva beat the incumbent sheriff 4 years ago, Jim McDonnell. So now Alex Villanueva is in that seat. He has lost to Robert Luna. So we have a new, I think that's a big deal.
And how will that change things? How is he?
Well, I mean, I think it'll change things. Villanueva was a very bombastic sheriff. I mean, he'd gone after like reporters and put the picture of a reporter on the screen saying that she was being investigated for, I mean, just all kinds of things like that. He would do a Facebook video, lambasting different politicians and different people. And it just wasn't what the LA County Sheriff had done before. Now, look, there have been all kinds of scandals. You had Lee Baca, who had Alzheimer's disease, but also was convicted, right, of corruption. Paul Tanaka, his assistant. You had, even going back in Orange County, you had Corona, who I believe went to jail. So LA and Southern California is no stranger to all kinds of corruption.
Shenanigans, yeah.
There's another interesting subject.
It is a big deal. It is a big deal. And I think Luna maybe brings some freshness to it. I don't know what he's going to do. Let's hope he's at least a decent guy and looks at, all of the things going on at the Sheriff's Department, including reports of gangs, actual deputies who are in gangs.
Wow.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Which has been widely reported.
Another great clip that plays on your website with you is how, this is another top of mind topic right now, how election officials fight conspiracies and how they can push back against that. Give us a thumbnail of that discussion.
How do you fight conspiracies? I don't know how you do that, Fritz. Yeah. I mean, look, I have a family, and I think we all probably do, maybe we do, of people who believe different things. And I've actually said this to several of my coworkers. If I can't convince my own family to believe that the election wasn't stolen in 2020, how am I going to convince somebody on the radio?
Oh, that's interesting.
And again, it goes back to that, the lack of the Venn diagram and the fact that we're talking over one another. We just believe what we believe because either someone tells us or because we have, skin in the game. And that's all that matters. And it doesn't, and whatever you have to say, whatever evidence you can put forth doesn't much matter. And I don't know how you fix that. I mean, maybe you fix it if you're the New York Times, instead of saying former President Trump's falsehoods, and you use the word lie instead, which always sort of gets my goat. The fact that, they use these very antiseptic, benign terms like falsehoods or misinformation and it's like, why don't you call it what it is?
Even election denying is still kind of a...
Election denying is a very antiseptic term.
Right.
They lied about the election. And so there is incontrovertible proof that the election was not stolen. They went to court 63 times and lost almost all of them, with the exception of one that was a very small case in Pennsylvania. So when you look at all of these things, and we could say this until we're blue in the face or red in the face, whatever you want to say, okay? But if people aren't going to listen to you, if they don't care about the facts, or they only know something's amiss. I mean, Donald Trump went on television and said, "I just know I won by a landslide."
People believe
no proof.
But people believe lies that they wish were true. And they welcome people to say something very truthy that is just aligned with whatever their fantasy is of reality. I want to talk for a second about Rick Caruso because he certainly put a lot of money into his campaign. I still don't know who our mayor is going to be. What are your thoughts on him?
She's ahead right now, which I find very surprising.
Yeah, so talk about let's talk about the mayoral race. We don't really know who he is, other than I think, like most people like me, feel like he's a Republican parading around as a Democrat to win as mayor of Los Angeles. What do you know?
I mean, he wasn't going to win as a Republican.
Yeah.
I think the last person to do that was who? Was Dick Reardon, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And Dick Reardon was, by the way, a very liberal Republican. So, I mean, he wasn't the Republican in the mold of,
No, he was a Schwarzenegger Republican.
Yeah. Right, exactly. So,
all right,
owned some businesses. And that's what I think Rick Caruso, it's interesting because, he owns these properties, these developments. There's, the Americana brand in Glendale, and there's the Grove and the place in Pacific Palisades. And, he amassed that kind of money. grew up in L.A., so feels a connection to L.A. There are a lot of folks who believe he's like very Trump-esque when it comes to, I'm just going to buy my way into the election. He spent $100 million. And by the way, it may have worked.
I'll tell you, some of those ads, the anti Karen Bass ads were devastating. The one with the Scientology, I just thought that's going to crush her. That one ad alone could take her down, but she's still floating ahead. It's very interesting.
And Fritz, I think, if you look at the numbers right now, I think she's probably going to pull it out. Mm-hmm. Now that's based on nothing aside from, we have this many votes. I think there's still a lot of the San Fernando Valley that's been counted and other parts that have not been counted. But here's my thinking on this, because you've seen a left lurch of the LA City Council. Mm-hmm. And in the same electorate that voted for the folks who are making that leftward lurch also are voting in the mayor's race as well. And they're not going to vote for Rick Caruso. Mm-hmm. They're going to vote for Karen Bass. Yes. So it's just a hunch. I have no data aside from something anecdotal in my head that I think she's going to pull it out. It's going to be very close, and it's going to prove that you certainly can buy an election.
Wow,
$100 million. That's a lot of money for a mayoral election.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money for any election.
I mean, he could have just bought a boat like a normal rich person.
In the Georgia Senate race, $100 million, which is insane.
Well, our producer Dina has a question for you.
Yes.
Hi, Steve. Is this on?
Hi, Dina.
Is this thing on?
I can hear you.
So my question hopefully is quick. It's just an interesting observation some people have made about the LA mayoral candidates, that there's like a celebrity divide, right, between who voted, like Gwyneth Paltrow and the Kardashians, they voted for Rick Caruso, and like Mark Hamill voted for Karen Bass. And it's sort of like an interesting, for those of us that live in Los Angeles, it's such a unique experience for like, who's the celebrity that voted like for the candidate that I voted for. And for other people in the country, it's interesting too, because you can really see like, what Chris Pratt's like, where his politics lie, and like some people may decide how they feel about him, how they feel about watching his movies, seeing who he voted for mayor of Los Angeles.
Even though he hopes it's the other way around. He hopes that if you like him, you'll pick the candidate that he picked.
Yeah. So I mean, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, it's LA, so obviously, and actors typically aren't very quiet about people that they want to be president, right? So why would it be different about the mayor of LA? Mm-hmm. By the Kardashians, if they're in Calabasas, I don't think Calabasas is in the city of LA, is it?
I don't know.
I think Calabasas is its own city. Can they even vote for mayor?
Pardon me, just let me hit the who cares button here. It'll just take a second.
Okay. See, that's what I mean, like the foreigners coming in and voting. Right. If those Kardashians voted, those are illegal votes. See?
I should have said Katy Perry and Gwyneth Paltrow, because I'm...
You can't come in from Calabasas and vote.
I know Woodland Hills is a part of LA, but I think Calabasas is another...
Maybe they're using Caitlin's address to vote. I don't know. It's illegal. I'm denying it. We're going to say something. Fritz, you wanted to say something about Bud Friedman and...
oh, yeah, I'm going to do that. But do I have time to ask him one more question?
Sure.
There's another very wonderful clip on your website, Steve, and I would recommend that everybody who with children or grandchildren listen to it. It's how to teach kids about the climate crisis without instilling fear in them. And you've talked about the climate crisis on your show. I just think that's just a really beautiful piece of information that parents can listen to and absorb. So I hope they will.
We've had you on talking about.
I know. And your credibility, crisis. It took 2 months for your credibility to return to normal.
I mean, how do you look at the things that are, the storms, the sheer magnitude?
Oh my God, it's
and
crazy.
Not think that something's going on.
I mean, how much more proof do you need?
Yeah, you can't look at the data and how warm things are. How long? I mean, look, somebody said the other day, it rained last week, right? Which was really nice.
Yeah.
We got a couple of days of rain. I forget how much. It was like more than an inch, though, I think, in LA, which was miraculous. And they were like, "Oh, thank God we got some rain." And I was like, "You better enjoy it because it could be March before it rains again."
Yep.
You know?
Well, the people that I know they're climate deniers, and I get them because I know exactly who they are. But the people that know there's climate change but don't care, like, well, what's the problem? All the water from the melting glaciers will eventually drown out all the brush fires, and everything will be okay.
It's these Kardashians that are pouring in across the border to vote for Ray
I'm
Caruso.
telling you, that's what it is.
Yep.
That's scary. It's scary. No, it's not going to work itself out. Look, the planet has gone through what the planet has gone through. We've had ice ages. We've had, supposedly, what killed off the dinosaurs? A giant meteor.
Kardashians.
Right?
All right.
Look it up. Look it up.
The planet's been through a lot over the course of millions and millions of years. So when you think about it, I mean, and then, and I think I've talked to you about this before. Think about how many, like at any given time, there are upwards of 30,000 aircraft in the air on planet Earth, circling the globe, going from one place to 30,000 aircraft at any given time. Think of all the jet fuel, the exhaust out of the jet.
Oh, I know. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, so for you to think that we don't have anything to do with it,
No.
or that the planet's not changing, or something's going on, or the fossil fuels that we use, or all of those things, I think it's myopic at best. And
1,000% right, my friend.
Yeah. So
you're preaching to the choir.
I don't know what you do about it. I mean, except you try and ban the things that make the Earth, warm up. And we did that with remember the ozone layer? Remember the big hole that we had in Antarctica?
Yeah.
We stopped using aerosol cans.
Yeah.
I think.
And styrofoam cups and all that stuff.
And it helped.
I have roll-on deodorant on me at this very moment.
Exactly.
Saving the planet.
Well,
You're
I
welcome.
do want to say in closing, you are so good at your job, and you do what we podcasters strive to do, which is develop this intimacy. When you listen to you, it always feels like it's you and your interview person and one listener in a very small, dark room. And if the conversation is
you
low,
just made it creepy.
No, I didn't mean to make it creepy. I think I love that kind of intimacy. And when you're in the car, it's very, I don't want to say soothing, but it's very
intimate,
comfortable.
It's warm and intimate.
Comfortable.
What did the TV school teach you, Fritz? About
I didn't go to TV school, which is painfully obvious to anybody that watches.
Talking to one person.
You're always talking to one person.
Oh no, that's exactly correct.
You're always talking to you're never talking. Like when people say hello, everybody, it's like I'm not in an arena. With the microphone coming down from the ceiling. I'm talking to one person.
That's what Rick Dees taught me. That you never say you guys. It's one person.
Yeah. No, that's true. And TV, you're breaking the fourth wall, so you establish this false intimacy with your eyes as well.
That's
but
right.
Keep up the good work, my friend. You're a sound of reason in this vast landscape of weirdness.
Thank you for inviting me on the show. And Fritz, we want you back on Greater L.A. Louise, too. You both come on.
Let's do it. If you'll forgive us, we're gonna give us a point of personal privilege here. I wanted to send my condolences out to the family of Bud Friedman, who was the founder of the Improv, and all the comedians whose careers he was responsible for. His success in L.A. is interesting, but if you really want to learn about his success, learn about him starting that club in Greenwich Village in New York or wherever it was, and all the stars who were on Broadway would perform and then come into the Improv and then do sets later. It's just a great story. God bless him. He was 90 and he passed away. And we want to wish our best to Jay Leno, who had this gasoline explosion in his face. He's in the Grossman Bird Center, but the latest I heard was he's stable, and we're praying for his recovery.
Heal, my friend.
Yep.
Sure are.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. We would love to continue this conversation with you on Instagram and Twitter, where we are at MediaPath Pod, and on Facebook, where our show page is MediaPath Podcast, and our Facebook group is MediaPath with Fritz and Wheezy Podcast Community. You can find full video podcast episodes loaded with bonus visual content on our YouTube channel, MediaPath Podcast. You can write to us at MediaPathPodcast@gmail.com. And if you enjoyed the show, please tell social media about it. #awesomest podcast ever. It's also super helpful if you could give us a nice rating in Apple Podcasts. And we've got some prizes coming up for folks who do exactly that. You can sign up for our fun and dishy newsletter at MediaPathPodcast.com. We want to thank our guests, Robert Manni, Steve Chiotakis, and Bob, Paul, and Susan Cowsill. Our team includes Dina Friedman, John Maddox, Sharon Bellio, Bill Filipiak, Thomas Hubble, Mason Brown, Garrett Arch, and you. Our theme music is by me and John Maddox. I am Louise Palanker here with Fritz Coleman. Be well and wise, and we will see you along the media path.